White House, thanks a lot, Major.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has narrowly passed a $4 trillion budget blueprint. It paves the way for a vote on the deep tax cuts sought by President Trump. The vote was 216 to 212. Every Democrat and 20 Republicans voted no.
The measure enables the GOP to introduce tax legislation that does not need any Democratic votes to win congressional approval. So we want to welcome in Democratic Congressman Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Budget Committee, and he joins us now on set. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So 20 Republicans did not vote in favor of this bill. Did you think it was going to be that close? They only had a 2-vote wiggle room.
I did, because the bill raises taxes on the middle class, because it's no longer going to allow folks to deduct their state income tax or property tax. And so basically you're raising taxes on the middle class to finance tax cuts for the very, very rich. And there are a lot of Republicans in New York, in New Jersey, and California whose constituents are going to have a tax increase.
Right.
So given that, do you think that the fact that there is some debate within the Republican Party will be enough to block the tax plan once it does come to the floor?
Well, I'm hopeful, but we need a lot of grassroots mobilization. What defeated the Republican effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act were a lot of citizens going to their members of Congress, telling them how this would affect them. And what we need is folks in these districts saying, I rely on being able to deduct my state income tax or local tax, and if not, you're going to really raise my taxes. And asking, why do we need more tax cuts for multimillionaires and billionaires financed on the backs of the middle class? It makes no sense. I have constituents saying, look, I'm willing to pay a little bit more if it were to expand health care, if it was to give folks a shot at debt-free college. But I'm not going to pay more to give corporate executives more tax breaks.
But isn't this budget blueprint doing a little bit of both? I mean, that's their argument that, yes, the wealthy are getting a break, but so are the middle class.
Well, a lot of the middle class, at least, are not getting a break because they used to be able to deduct any of the state income tax and property tax, and that's going to be repealed. So their taxes are going to go up. Their argument is they're going to cut these corporate taxes, and suddenly the corporations are going to give people wage increases. Well, the wage increases haven't happened since 1980, and if you want to raise wages, just raise wages. Give the tax credits to working families. So I think what we're saying is, why are you doing the trickle-down approach again, where you're privileging corporate executives, shareholders, when really what the country needs is help for the working class and middle class?
Congressman, I want to ask you about the criticism the president has received from the likes of Senator Bob Corker, from Senator Jeff Flake, understanding, of course, that they're Republicans. That is what makes it so intriguing. I'm sure you, as a Democrat, probably have criticism of the president as well. But I want to know why you think the Republican leadership in the House, specifically Paul Ryan, has been less critical. He has not joined in with some of these very senior senators. Senator Corker essentially said that President Trump is debasing the nation, that he doesn't believe the president is a role model for children. Jeff Flake wrote a manifesto about President Trump, and yet the speaker has said, look, he believes that people should keep these debates, these criticisms to themselves or behind closed doors. Why is that?
Well, in private, a lot of people have these criticisms of the president. I mean,
Republicans?
Republicans, too. They say we wake up every morning to a new tweet, and that's how foreign policy is being made. People in Trump's own administration don't know what to expect. But they have made a decision, I think, for political reasons, that they need to pass this tax reform bill, or they want to pass the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. So they bite their tongues because they're trying to achieve these larger policy goals. And it's very sad that we don't have more voices saying publicly what they're saying privately, that this is debasing our values.
But, Senator Ted Cruz the other day, I think in a radio interview, said everybody should just shut up and do their job. But isn't part of your job as a member of Congress, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, part of your mandate is to uphold the Constitution of the United States? The legislative branch is a co-equal branch of government to the executive branch. Why are some people in Congress unable to voice what it is that you're saying that they do behind closed doors just because they have an agenda that they want to achieve for party as opposed to country?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think the political reason is there was a poll out that shows over 90% of folks who voted for Donald Trump, Republicans, would vote for him again. So I think there's a genuine concern with Steve Bannon saying that He's going to have all these Republican challenges from the right. They don't want to pick the wrong fight. But one of the places where Congress really hasn't stepped up is on matters of war and peace. I mean, how many Americans do you think knew that we had troops in Niger?
Did you?
Well, I was aware. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, but it was certainly not something that was debated and discussed. We have troops in dozens of countries overseas that are fighting in counterterrorism operations that the American public isn't aware of. They don't know if these troops are being protected. They don't know the mission. And the president, when he campaigned, said, I'm going to get us out of these interventions. But that hasn't happened. Congress hasn't even voted on whether we should be in these places. And in my town halls, I'm getting asked, what are we doing there? So this is Congress's first duty on matters of war and peace, and we've really been silent.
Congressman, before we let you go, because we're sort of running out of time, you're also sort of pushing your own party to be a little more progressive. You're part of the Justice Democrats, and you've been encouraging more progressive candidates, including one to run against Dianne Feinstein. What do you think your party needs to do? You know, there's a lot of focus on the Republican Party. Makes sense, but what's going on with the Dems?
Well, we need a bold economic vision. Right now, I think the big challenge is that people aren't earning enough to meet their basic needs. So how are we going to really increase wages? How are we going to create the jobs of the future? And we need new people in politics. We need young folks. We need women. We need minorities. We need people with real backgrounds, steel workers and working class folks running and having competition and a competition of ideas. So,
do you need new leadership?
Well, I support Nancy Pelosi, but I do think we need new voices in leadership, in giving new ideas and a new perspective. I think one of the things in 2016, people are tired of the status quo. I was meeting with the French ambassador, and he said in France, out of 520 parliamentarians, 424 were new. And they were musicians, and they were mathematicians, and people from the media. They weren't traditional politicians. And I think that's what this country is hungry for. They want a new generation of leadership.
You're quoted as saying that although Senator Feinstein is running for a full fifth term, that you've called her out of touch with the grassroots.
Right.
Others would argue, look, she's been able to get things done. Her experience, and it's the same thing that Nancy Pelosi has said, look, they may not like me. They may think I'm out of touch. They may think I'm a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, but I know how to whip votes. Yeah. And I know how to get things done in Washington. I know how to work with the other side. What do you say to that?
Well, first, I respect Senator Feinstein, and there are areas like on gun safety where she has led. But there's a huge difference between her and Nancy Pelosi. On the big questions of her time, Senator Feinstein voted to go into Iraq. Pelosi opposed it. Senator Feinstein has been for mass surveillance and extending the Patriot Act. Leader Pelosi has been a defender of civil liberties. And on economic policies, Feinstein voted with Bush for tax cuts to the 1%. Pelosi has been much more focused on middle class and the working class. So there are just philosophical differences. My point, though, is Senator Feinstein has every right to run. She has a record. I have a lot of respect for her. But democracy is about the competition of ideas, and there should be a progressive challenge, and let's debate those issues.
Representative Khanna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.